Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Herman Fok. He's the founder of Fenog, a creative fan site, a visual board he's building for his working experience as a creative. Herman actually worked at Crystal Dynamic, worked at 2K, had a really amazing career into UX and UI. So I'm going to leave it up to Herman so he can present himself and hopefully he'll talk about his career and his application that he's built. So, Herman, it's all yours, my friend.
All right. Um, Hi, everyone. Thanks, Stefan, for that intro, and thanks everyone for showing up. I know it's Sunday, so I really appreciate you all spending your weekend with me. I'm really excited to be here to share my experience working in games. Couple things to know. I can't show unapproved mockups or boards from the games I worked on, so you'll mostly be seeing shipped screenshots or publications. Because of that and the amount I'm going to cover, I think my talk is a little bit surface level, but I think it's going to let me cover more topics for a broader level of UI enthusiasts. Um, because, if I can help one person in any way, that's the ultimate goal, given the state of everything that's going on. So let's get into it. A bit of background first. I worked professionally as a digital artist for 24 years, 18 of them being in the gaming industry. This is a mural of some of the games I've been credited on. My career spanned 28 ship titles, enduring two generation console switches in between. Looking back, it was interesting because I never really planned on doing UI or UX as a career until I actually got my first job in games. Um, but yeah, here's my unconventional path I can bring you through. In my younger years, I played a lot of video games on Atari and Apple IIe, 5-inch quarter floppy disk games. Later on in my middle school years, I would bike to the pizza parlors and 7-Eleven after school and spend all my leftover lunch money, quarters in the arcade machines there. I still remember holding my breath while the big kids filled these arcades with cigarette smoke. After graduating high school, I started general ed classes at community college. In about 2002, a friend of mine got a job lead to be a tester for a video game called in San Mateo. It happened to be an unmarked QA lab for Konami, right in my neighborhood. The test lead sat me down, handed me an unmarked PS1 burned disc, and told me to write down any bugs I see. I had no idea at that time how epic it was to playtest the most legendary games to ever exist. The newness of the game testing wore off eventually. So I went on to community college classes at night, trying what everyone was doing in Silicon Valley at the time, which was computer science. It was an intro course to object-oriented programming called Visual Basic. The book that the teacher issued me was really thick and intimidating. I just couldn't really absorb it very well, and yeah, YouTube didn't really exist back then either. Um, but as I worked through my first Hello World app and form filling apps, I remember spending an unnecessary amount of time adjusting the interface before the coding itself. Then around the same time, something called Macromedia Flash was taking the internet by storm. I don't know if you guys remember some of these sites. Maybe I'm showing my age here. All sorts of really cool audio, visual, interactive movie experiences were being born. They weren't created by big entertainment studios either. These were individuals making incredible experiences on the internet. Let me just optimize for video here. There we go. Um, so I, um, oh, sorry. So I downloaded Flash, the studio demo, and I tried it out. It was instant gratification, and it even had ActionScript to code with it still. Flash made me believe in an art career, so I made the commitment. I attended local college at CSU Hayward, the only one that had a multimedia art program my parents and I could afford. I double majored in graphic design as well. It wasn't like the fancy or big prestigious art schools, but one professor offered one 3D animation class. That professor became my friend and mentor to me, and he opened up the niche world of 3D entertainment and game dev industry. He would often say to me, if you're going to make it as an artist, it's not the 9 to 5, it's the 5 to 9 afterwards that matters, and just level up. You need to level up. His words seared into my brain, and ever since then, and even now, I take a spare moment to learn about something new and keep growing.
Hey,
Um, what you're
Herman,
what
is
you're
that all
what
done in Flash?
This is all done in Flash, yeah,
Oh, nice.
in
Hey,
Photoshop.
do me a favor. Can you move that zoom bar because it's on the top screen and we can all see it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I
How
don't know
do
if you can move it to like another screen or something.
how do
Uh,
I do that?
uh, good old
What?
zoom, eh?
Right. Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that. Is
No,
that
it's all good.
gone?
It's all good. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this stuff is okay.
I think you can just click and drag that and put it into like somewhere else on the screen, if I'm not mistaken.
Can I click this? Uh, all right. That should be good, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. It's totally fine.
Okay. Um, so yeah, what you're watching was one of my class projects, and or what you watched was one of my class projects, and I used this piece to land my first job. That first job was plaguing the internet with annoying web banners in a tech company in Silicon Valley. It wasn't glorious, but it was fun. It was surprisingly fun. Every day I would come in and be asked to create something new from scratch. No creative brief at all. Just go create something in 1 to 3 days and make it as whimsical and eye-catching as it could be. The fascinating thing in ad tech space is how meticulously everything is documented between the main concept, the fonts, the color choices, the movements I did. It was all tracked, and I learned a lot from it. I kept hopping to other community colleges in the meantime, especially when I found out they offered 3D courses. So I kept exercising that 3D muscle. After a few years in tech and freelancing as a web designer, I found a job posting on Craigslist for a company called Visual Concepts, looking for a front-end designer. The posting stood out to me in Silicon Valley because it was mostly bloated with tech jobs right before the dot-com bubble. I thought to myself, like, what the heck is a front-end designer? Because I love games and I was somewhat adjacent to learning 3D, I decided to apply. Now, I'm not sure what the Studio 80 who interviewed me saw in my annoying web banners and community college work, but at the interview, the Studio 80 made a comment, a stinging comment about the rig of my 3D character being weighted incorrectly at the armpit. But my unfocused creative brain saw his gamer headphones with a mic attached, and I instantly knew he was playing Counter-Strike because at that time everyone was playing Counter-Strike in early 2000. So I think I owe part of my foot in the door to this game. Thank you, Valve. The first game I worked on was All Pro Football 2K8. Coming from tech, I had a ton of imposter syndrome. My professor's words echoed in me like Ghost Ben Kenobi. This won't end at 9 to 5. You need to always level up. So after work, I would dig into Andrew Kramer After Effects tutorials and practice Maya every night to fill my big skill gaps. I then proceeded to have a long career at Visual Concepts, Take Two. This video is an edited selection of games I contributed to in order of when they were made. I edited this video to things I either personally designed, implemented, or had deep involvement in. The part of the UI I gravitated towards was the first big impression ones, like the main menus, flow sequences, explainers, scorebugs, the new back of the box features. This was usually used as style guides for the rest of the UI. What you're seeing is a mix of front-end menus and presentation UI I worked on. Presentation UI is basically everything that mimics full motion graphics packages that you would see on TV, including in-game HUD, UIs, and scorebugs. Sports games is a little different in the sense that it releases annually, which means we only got 10 months of development and 2 months in between the next one to lock down the stability before starting the next one. Um, every year, our team was expected to come up with fresh branded wrapper menus and in-game presentation UI. The software stack we used was anything for prototyping, Photoshop, After Effects, Figma. But then we would convert the mocks into basic 3D geometry in Maya files, then ingesting those Maya files into proprietary UI assembled in a proprietary engine. Maya isn't a UI layout tool at all, so this offered a lot of technical challenges. We would model flat plane geometry essentially and make replicas of the UI using basic meshes. And then we would nine slice them and then rig them with bones for stretching. Then we would animate them and define interactive frame states and then deliver a cleaned up Maya file, all for a singular UI component. Well, this was a lot of setup at the time. It gave the UI team complete three-dimensional freedom to create immersive experiences while still applying the same UI principles of design. We even conceptualized and created our own 3D environment backgrounds when we needed to convey spatial or diegetic UI in world. If you played modern sports games, the menus go deep, dense with stats, comparisons, and all things that hardcore sports fans come to expect. As you can imagine, it was a real demanding challenge, which meant I needed to build a large UI art team to handle everything. I invented UI lead roles, a UI producer role, UI technical roles to support our core concept, motion designers and implementation UI artists to execute every facet of the UI. In the end, I built a very capable team of artists that grew 17 people large. Um, I and many of our teams survived four layoffs in that duration of time. So four layoff waves under Visual Concepts, but unfortunately, I didn't survive the last years. That brings me to some elephants in the room I can't ignore before moving on. I'm sure many of you have this in mind. Um, Layoffs and studio closures deserves to be addressed. Every every day, another fellow dev post, a green open for work banner. Seems like every other week, a tech or studio layoff makes headlines. It feels like the industry is shifting, and the normalizing of layoffs is just saddening to see. Big publishers are no longer making big bets on new game IPs, and they're staying safe and growing into live services. The recent data I've been researching, it correlates to a shrinking economy, less purchasing power for consumers, meaning they can buy less luxury items like games. So people are instead just paying for like gas and food. But maybe we can zoom in a little bit closer at this problem. A game survey, I did some research here, from Circana. They surveyed 2,500 gamers, mobile, console, PC, free-to-play gamers. And it found that a combined 63% of players who only bought like two games or less. And it's just the 4% who bought one game or more a month. That 4% of buyers are the main group holding up the entire industry. And that group is continually shrinking. With console makers competing for hardware and AI infrastructure, it just means less people are willing to buy higher priced consoles, which means less people buying games. 2023 was probably the worst year, reeling from bad decisions on the overgrowth of the pandemic. Um, Yet investors rallied on layoff headlines. The industry is in a brutal structural reset where companies are slashing headcount to artificially preserve the profit margins of investors' demands. So if you're anyone you know who is affected by this, this chart doesn't measure how talented you are as an artist. The value doesn't disappear because someone deleted your row from a spreadsheet. So is it all doom and gloom? Will the jobs come back? Doom Doom just gets the most attention, so no is not all doom and gloom. But I do think jobs will return when human value is desired. Um, Hiring is bleak at the moment, not gonna lie. A lot of talented veterans are even leaving the industry altogether. No one can predict the future, but if I am to hypothesize, I think this might be just a temporary dip, and your chances might be better than you think. So let me try to explain. Here's a graph of jobs posted over 20 years, in purple. Notice the contraction. It looks kind of the same as the previous graph. What makes it feel worse is the green line, representing all the candidates currently on the market. They consist of laid off veterans and new graduates entering the market. And so, yes, it's very competitive. But if you're looking at this graph and thinking, should I even try? Like, my answer is still yes. If we were to follow the yellow dotted trend line, which normalizes average growth of gaming jobs, we should be just a little bit higher than we currently are. The industry is seeing a shift from $300 million mega projects to $30 million ones in indie games. Like maybe this is a catalyst we're looking for. Perhaps the shift will go to AA games. I think they're calling it the AA budget renaissance. Some of the top laid off veterans from AAA are starting their own studios, and when they establish themselves, they'll need UI and UX done. There's growing fatigue in the AAA live services. I think even AR glasses is starting to take massive momentum. So perhaps battery will be efficient, and people will start making experiences and need UI for AR glasses. Um, but yeah, that big green line at the top represents all candidate jobs, including HR, legal, finance, engineering, and all other different art disciplines. So we kind of need to zoom in a little bit more to break this down. Not all artists compete in the same market, especially specifically for game artists. I think we can break it down into multiple markets because they're not equally competitive. For instance, on the left, if your value comes from making and executing individual game assets, you're probably competing against a much larger pool of artists. Um, if your work involves solving design or experience problems instead, your competition starts to narrow a bit. And once your value comes from judgment, systems thinking, collaboration, technical implementation, creative leadership, and just being really integrated in engines, your skills are in much more demand. The goal isn't to choose one. The goal is to become someone who can articulate in all three, be a triple threat. So let's stop looking at charts and line graphs for a second. Let's get back into UI. Um, Help. Maybe you're totally new. Um, yes, entry level jobs are fewer, but here's a possible playbook on how to get out of this entry level status and get some confidence. If you're someone who loves art and technology and solving problems, and maybe you're just in a different domain and you're curious, you're in good company. Here's a playbook. In my experience, it takes about 1,000 days, roughly 3 years, to be confident in a skill to eventually get paid for it. You don't need marathon sessions or 15, you just need 15, 30 minutes a day to focus learning, with focused learning to get you further. And it's better than doing like long occasional bursts. The key is showing up through the plateaus because that's when habit turns into fluency. When you get really into it, sometimes you'll find yourself doing 1 hour a day when you have really good momentum. What will come out of this is an amazing array of portfolio pieces. And I think that's something the UI peeps always talked about.
Hey, Herman, before you keep
Yeah.
going, so OCN had a quick question for you,
Oh,
if you don't
yeah.
mind. Sorry about that.
Sure. No worries.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. But before in your previous slide, you said that there's like a three pillar of like I can do assets, I can do like stuff like that, and in the third one it says I define the direction. What do you mean by that as a UI UX designer? How can I define direction? Like I can make asset, I can solve problem, but how can a UI UX designer define the direction? Is
Yes.
my question clear?
Yeah, your question's very clear, and that's a great question. I think defining direction comes with a little bit of agency, but I think as you get closer to the UX side of it, the questions just kind of naturally appear. Um, like the decisions, for instance, like you can make a really gorgeous UI, or maybe there's a really dense UI you have to build, like an option screen or a like a character builder screen, for instance. And you kind of have to make a decision, right? Like this is a user that's about to look at the first impression of your game. And if you put a super dense menu like that at the beginning of your game, say when they're onboarding, it could easily turn off the user to even playing your game because it's just intimidating. So you might need to make a defining direction to say, well, let's put this back a little bit more. Let's onboard our users first and place this menu a little bit further into the game. So kind of high level thinking like that will help you determine, okay, how dense should I design this menu versus how how kind of spacious you want to make it and make it into a flow and kind of chop it up. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Hey, can I piggyback on that question though?
Sure.
So, when you were presenting like Tomb Raider, like that
Yeah.
UI that had a lot of like three-dimensional, and I think you were going through one scene to another, and you saw that thumbnail going into a 3D space. Um,
Yeah.
I guess my question is that a lot of games will have like a special sauce, right? And
Yeah.
we can talk about like games like Marvel Rivals, where the character selection screen is essentially like a circle, which we've never seen. And like Marvel Rivals also has like a lot of micro animations, which is I feel like it's part of their secret sauce. I guess I get this question a lot from my students. It's like, how does a studio, because talking about define the direction, right? So if we were to look at the visual direction of a certain game, how do you come up with the secret sauce, right? How is that conversation going? Have you ever been through that type of conversation, and how did those conversations came aboard, and how did you prove your point of like, hey, I think this direction is good, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. In Tomb Raider, I was brought on a little bit late, so specifically, that kind of visual design was already set when I joined on. But from the ones I did in NBA 2K, I usually solve those decisions by when I had time, creating mood boards. Um, And so we would brainstorm just, with a team, what like defining the game first. Like, what is NBA? What does NBA mean to your audience? It's is it what are the feelings that you convey from this brand? So when you think about NBA, it's sports, but what does sport feel like? It's fast, it's dynamic. So you want like angular, things that make it feel sporty, for instance. Anything that conveys speed. So we would literally write the word speed, circle it, and then brainstorm off of those words. And it just branches off into a tree of ideas. And then we would throw kind of images that relate to the word speed. And we would kind of form those ideas. And then we would kind of take the best ones, vote on the things that we liked, and then say, hey, like, here's the most top voted ones that we liked. We would even involve other creatives in it in other departments. Um, and then we would start making mocks off of that. And we would kind of branch off and make a few things and come back like maybe in a week or two, and we'll see what sticks. And so that was kind of my process. If that
Nice.
answers your question,
Yeah, yeah,
Stefan.
definitely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, this is what it's all about, learning. So keep on with the UI peeps. With that being said, in 1,000 days, we're here today. This is day one, so let's go. This is going to be the long section of this, so bear with me. I hope you had some coffee this morning. UX and UI, what are they? The UX is the user experience, focuses on how the product feels, clarity of the design, and how usable things are. The user interface focuses on how the product looks, the visual elements, and the visual design language. Usually the UX, I know there's some debate about that, and there's a lot of gray areas and all that, but usually the UX design happens first for usability and flow when their work and then their work passes sideways to a UI artist to apply the design language and aesthetics. UX is seldom needed when it's obvious how a screen is used. Um, then that's when the UI people can actually take over and do cool immersive UI, at least in my experience. Bigger teams usually have the affordance of specialized UX people, but if you're in a smaller, say, indie team, you're probably doing both. Um, First, before you dive into Gestalt principles, you might need to have a fundamental understanding of color theory and layout composition. For Gestalt principles, this is the long part. Hopefully, your coffee is kicked in. These are the core laws across everything in graphic design, motion design, iconography, logo making, typography, and of course, UI UX. These are the set of psychological laws that explain how the human brain naturally organizes visual elements into unified groups, patterns, and shapes. We use these effectively in UI UX to help the user understand all the information presented to them. So let me try to quick fire some of these examples. Proximity is placing things that are relatively close to each other in a closer group. For instance, labels directly above items or the clustering of action buttons near specific content helps users understand the connection. In practice, this is useful to convey different chunks of information to the user when designing very dense menus. For instance, like inventory menus or character builder menus like this one. Symmetry is often used in sports and fighting games. In sports, every team versus team, player versus player, score stat versus score stat requires horizontal or vertical symmetry. It's a really good way to compare two sets of data really quickly. Similarity is a grouping of elements that share visual characteristics like color, shape, or size. This is used to establish hierarchy or tiers. For example, here in Lego Drive, I made the premium tier items bigger to differentiate from the smaller tier items there on the same carousel. The rule of closure is when our brains instinctively kind of complete the shapes or patterns. In interface design, this is widely used in sports logo typography and responsive design. For instance, cutoff carousels usually indicate that there's more to scroll across past the screen. In 2012, which was interesting, we needed to fit dense content in a 4:3 aspect ratio. So we needed to use closure to cut off half of the player photo against the edge of the menu, and we still got a sense of who the player's likeness was. For continuity is when our eyes tend to follow the smoothest path. UX designers utilize this to guide users' eye through complex multi-step forms or down a long scrolling landing page. This is a simple example on the right. It's interesting how the perspective is used to discover that continuity, guiding the user's eye. Continuity can also be described as how your eye flows through content on the screen. Since you're in the Western audience, where we are, we usually read from top left to right and repeat downwards. So graphic design has always used this advantage to help guide the user through the content. So here in these instances, you know, the main H1 headers are placed at direct eye level um, to the player's photo's eye line. And once we established that, that ended up being kind of the anchor, and the rest of the layout fell in place naturally once that was established. We naturally separate focal objects, which is the figure, from the surroundings, the ground. So figure ground being the next one. There is two versions of that. There's the unstable version, and this is the Batman and Penguin poster on the left. This is my favorite poster. It's called unstable, but it's very interesting. Now, I haven't been able to ever use this in games. If anyone ever does, I'd love to see it. The more useful version of that is the stable version, where on the right, where you're giving contrast to the overlays using background blurs or dimming the background so that things pop a little bit better. But in typography and headers and logos, it's very successful. Common region and connectedness is when we perceive elements inside the same bounded area, like a card layout. Or they can be connected by lines. Card containers usually have, they're highly effective for breaking up dense data dashboards into bite-sized logical chunks. The focal point can be described as a click-to-action large animated buttons. In this example, QuickTime events use animation effectively to bring your eye to a focal point to grab the user's attention as quickly as possible and instruct the user on what to do. I think focal point is where like the 12 principles of animation also comes to shine, and where motion graphics adds another layer of technique to gain focal point. I wish I had time to go through each example of these as well, but some of these are using games. This is more web in a way, but this grid views is hopefully sufficient. A lot of ads use this technique, but you can certainly use them to add secondary flourish to call to action buttons or level upgrades, for instance. Try to only use 3 or less of these gestalt laws. I think live service games start to fall victim to this due to the nature of constant updates building on top of the UI. Seasonal new features are always vying for attention against each other in this update. So, this is less cognitive load. Of course, this is a whole lot. So Gestalt will help with legibility, but graphic design can teach you the rules of readability. Font styling, the rule I use is try to only use 3 fonts in your design. That includes weights as well. You will need to stray from this from time to time to create, as you're handed denser content. But this is generally a good number to aim for quick design and readability. The more fonts you add, it increases cognitive load, meaning, more for your brain to visually translate. In game UI, when setting the width of your text box for large strings, like text in a codex you would open for a narrative story game or tutorial text boxes, you want to try to use a minimum of 6 to 7 to wrap your lines. But the optimal readability is 9 to 12. 9 to 12 words. Also, don't put really wide text wrapping unless it's just one single line, like a help bar. And lastly, if you're shipping a game that localizes for Asian audience, if you place vertically written text, make sure you have a system that rotates each glyph for localizing. There's no such thing as condensed Asian glyphs either. So when it localizes, it may not appear as you would expect. To conclude, whether you're entry level or a veteran from a different domain, spend 1,000 consecutive daily habits or 30 minutes a day practicing these Gestalt principles or animation principles daily in your graphic design and UX layouts. And hopefully you'll come out with a lot more work that gives you a portfolio that the industry will see when the economy picks back up. And you'll have a lot more confidence on your hands. So now let's say you're ready to apply. I know it's gloomy out there, but remember the potential catalyst. This is temporary. Let me give you experience from a hiring perspective. You'd think applying at a job is dead simple, but here's the common things I see that people trip up on. First and foremost, application portfolios are of course crucial, but on your online applications, don't just put myportfolio.com. Like, do yourself a favor and put the entire HTTPS www dot. This will usually create an easy working link. There's been a few times I would try to drag and copy and paste someone's link and I'll grab an invisible character or mistype it and I usually end up like passing because yeah, I don't have time to research it.
Can I chime in for a second? The
Sure,
worst
yeah.
is when you get a resume that was done in Photoshop and there's no hyperlinks.
Yeah, like
Like that
PDFs.
just
Oh
shows
man.
me like, no, this is not good, you know. But I've
Yeah.
seen people submit JPEGs as a resume, and that's a big no,
Oof.
you know. Yeah, but that's a real thing. A lot of people do that. So that's good that you called this out.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. I've seen those JPEG ones too, and I'm like, come on, guys. Really? Um, yeah. Uh, Cover letters are also worth doing. They were usually the tiebreakers for me. Don't AI generate those. It's okay to create templates, but try to tailor the first sentence towards, the actual job. Sometimes I like to do it at the beginning and the end. So like I'll say something like, "Hey Ubisoft, I loved Assassin's Creed 1 and 2. I love the UI and the Animus. It's super cool, and I'm here to apply for a UI position." Um, for portfolios, like I said, I have 10 seconds usually to skim through a resume. It's usually just skimming for the portfolio links, like Stefan said. Um, but put the entire link on your resume too. Um, I have 15 more seconds to go through a portfolio when I'm looking at it. So if something catches my eye, more time is spent on that work. So put your best work up front. I know you've heard this in college many times, but the first 3 to 5 uh, items on your homepage is the stuff you want to show. That's show the breadth of your work and your strongest skill. If you're allowed to, try to even write a small case study for your work. Um, and if you're doing an animation reel, avoid long intros. Um, don't embellish and lastly, don't embellish your portfolio where it outshines your actual work. Now, this may be different from other hiring managers, but I actually stopped looking for UI specialist. Um, I started posting for JDs where a wider peripheral skills were included against their core UI UX. So instead of UI UX designer, I specifically posted for UI UX and 3D generalist because, well, first that was our pipeline. But what I would also usually get were a wider mix of skill sets like After Effects and scripting and modeling and texture and video editing. So show a pattern of self-learning, like even sketching during your commute or studying after hours doing tutorials and you can even post that stuff and just showing that you're actively learning. I've seen a resume where he actually dated what he was doing and I'm like, okay, it's cool. He's current and he's still working on his stuff.
Hey,
um
Herman. Oh,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Stephanie had a question.
Oh sure. Hi Stephanie.
Yeah, hi. So earlier you mentioned that, when you're working on small indie teams, you're gonna probably be doing more than one. You're gonna own the whole end-to-end process probably. And,
Mhm.
this is sort of coming up now, in what you're showing on this slide. So my whole experience so far has been working on small indie teams.
Mhm.
And so I've mostly been in charge of everything UI UX related on all of these projects, which on one hand is great, but it also makes me feel like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. Um, and so, so like I can make functional UI, I can implement it, I can do some tech art, stuff like that. But it's all kind of just to get it functional and it's not super flashy or I'm not super specialized in any one particular thing. Is that more valuable or is it more valuable? Because what you're saying right now makes me think that I'm actually on the right path. Having sort of a broad, but maybe not necessarily deep skill set is
Yeah.
okay. Like, do you see that being still valuable for the next few years? Like, is everybody gonna be all small indie teams now that all the AAAs are laying everybody off and all that? Should I still try to do a specialty? Like, how is this gonna go?
Definitely. I mean, great question. I actually have some future slides that dives a little bit into that as well. But I do think, like this slide is showing here, having a peripheral skill set is good, and being a generalist is starting to become a little bit more valuable. Of course, I think there's room for both. Right now, the skills are in UI UX specialist. Definitely before it was. Gosh, it's such a hard question, because it takes a little bit of forethought. Um, but I think I would say yes. I think you're on the right path. Being a jack of all trades, you're going to start to interface with people that are probably going to be doing the same as well. I think with everything AI and how everything is just kind of merging and overlapping, we're gonna need the language to articulate on multiple fronts. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And then Ocean has a question as well. Sorry to interrupt, Herman, but
Oh, no worries. I need
Um,
to. Oops. Sorry. Go ahead.
sorry. I lost the majority of the first couple of minutes of the presentation, but from
Mhm.
what you're talking to us, you've read portfolios. Have you ever like how do you say that? I'm sorry, I speak French usually. Like when Stéphane engagé quelqu'un.
to hire somebody?
Yeah, have you ever hired somebody yourself or you've gone through portfolios? Do you do that often? Like
Yeah, yeah. If you sorry, you missed the first part of that. Yeah, I talked about hiring, like what to look for. Yes, I've gone through hundreds of resumes, and I conducted the. Maybe you're talking about the actual interview part. Is that what you mean?
yes, but I have another quick question about this. I feel like you've talked about AI, and I don't want
Mhm.
to have make a whole conversation about this, but when you see a designer or UI UX person that make like a prototype or something and they use a lot of AI, and you see like another designer that doesn't use AI, and you can see what they've done, and they've done it, and it comes from them. Of course, AI comes from us, but it's just like writing. How do you
Yeah.
react to that? And maybe it's a difficult question, and I know AI is taking a lot of places, but what are you shocked? Are you okay with that? Are you like when you see a portfolio or you see a candidate and it's just like a lot of AI in their stuff?
Right. No, no, that's a really good question. I think if I were to see that, when I do see that, if I can immediately notice and know that it's AI, that's already a minus from me, right? So
Okay.
I think in the future the goal, and I'll always go for the thing that shows human effort and human
Yes.
touch. I'm zooming in on pixels. Like I don't know if you guys ever done it. Like I think there's a is this AI or not websites. Like you can actually like kind of train yourself to see like what is AI
Yeah.
or not. Um, but yeah, I it makes it tougher because like I said, I only spend 10 seconds on a portfolio or 15. So now I need to spend a little bit more
Mhm.
time to really discern that. But yes, to answer your question, I would probably usually go for the thing that feels more human to me. Like I'm actually looking
Okay.
for errors now, like that, like seeing errors to me, like that human, even just a miss offset. I'm like, okay, this is human. It kind of brings me a little bit of joy to see that, which is unfortunate because it used to be the other way around where I'm looking for perfection.
Yeah.
Um,
Because we see a
yeah,
lot of like big studios and everything that are using AI and everything. And
right.
as we take Stefan class, and sometimes, it's okay to use AI and everything, but some students
Yeah,
are gonna do it all by themselves and draw and everything, but it's super long. And
yeah,
maybe being more efficient with AI is maybe better for some people who have trouble illustrating stuff and everything. But I'm always
yeah,
wondering, do I need to go faster, or do I need to have showcase my work? And it's a
right.
dilemma, and it's a dilemma I face, like as a UI and UX designer who illustrate and everything. I don't go fast
Yeah,
than my other peers and everything, and I'm like, it's stressing
right,
me out, but it's not AI. So I was just
right.
thank you.
Yeah, especially as an illustrator, it's tough. I can't imagine. I think, y- y- I think it's adapting. I think it's, maybe more using AI, especially, for just ideation. It's tougher when you're an illustrator because it's like, okay, like, did you AI that and then just copy it? Like, that's just such a blur for me. I'm not an illustrator, so I don't know, the crossover there. But when you look for UI UX, I think I would actually be more impressed if someone was more upfront about their AI usage. So if they, like I said, if you did a write up on your portfolio, of like, you show the final output, it looks amazing, but you also document like what the AI was, like document the AI slop and say this is what it looked like, and then this is what I did on top of that, and this is how I made it look more, more human, and that we're not going to just ship this sloppy thing. And I think maybe you could do that as well as an illustrator, just show your process of how you iterated. And in that sense, I think it's then okay to use AI as long as you've humanized it enough and you've made it your own. I mean, it's not that different from, even going, pre AI when we used to do mood boards, and you would see inspiration, right? And you'd be like, oh, that's great. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to, see this awesome design, that someone else did, and I'll try to make it my own, right? So, um, yeah, hopefully that sort of answers your question.
Thank you, Herman.
We good?
Yes,
Any other questions?
think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, show a pattern of learning, sketching during commutes and all that. Do the tutorials, um, and spending a Sunday morning listening to a random guy like me talk about UI also counts as pattern of learning. So, um, so now let's say you're ready for interviews. You got an email saying, "Hey, like, come join us in a Zoom meet." When you do this, or when you get into the call, always screen share and show your visuals on your portfolio as soon as possible, like right after you introduce each other. And if you're in person, bring your laptop or iPad and quickly bring their attention to it. What this does is it makes your nervousness go away. You're always going to be nervous going to an interview. Um, you're familiar with your work, and so you get to show your excitement about your UI art and nerd out with it. And you're likely going to be talking with fellow visual people, so you instantly make that connection when you show visuals. If you're on a video call and you're still nervous, put your Zoom window as close to where you can to where your camera is. Like I'm doing it right now, so it looks like you're kind of speaking eye level with them, and it does something to the receiver. It feels a little bit more like you're connecting. Um, Put a photo of something you like or someone you like behind the camera. so you feel comfortable. Like I have a photo of my kids drawing right behind my camera right now. Um, be genuinely nice and show enthusiasm. This can be your future teammates. Show interest and show interest yourself by asking questions about them. After all, you're interviewing me as well. Um, be ready to explain critical thinking behind your work. And sometimes when they don't do enough of it, a lot of times I would try to kind of wrench it out of them. Like I would ask something like, um, would you rather eat a large bowl of cereal or a piece of cereal that's as large as the bowl? And if someone were to say, "Oh, I'll just eat this bowl of cereal,"
Did that
I'll
get
know
you
they
a
didn't
job?
really. I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
And did that get you a job? I bet it did.
Yeah, no one ever asked me that one, but this is a fun one to ask because it usually, it gets them, it gets me knowing how they think. So, like a person who would critically think about that question would be like, well, what type of cereal is it? Is it Captain Crunch? And is it gonna hurt the top of my mouth? Or like what utensils do I have to cut this big piece of cereal up? Um, So now let's manifest that you've passed interviews and you've accepted your offer. Yay, let's go. So now you're in 90-day survival mode. Most employers have 90-day evaluation windows to decide if a new hire is working out or if you're a culture fit. Um, this is work for the new hires I mentioned. I mentored.
Hey,
Don't
Herman.
isolate.
Oh, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. Mariah has a question for you.
Oh, hi,
Yay!
hi, Mariah.
Howdy, hi. Hi. So I kind of come from a background of VFX, so
Okay.
that's why I'm kind of coming at this question for you. So I know personally speaking, I've taken a lot of art tests for VFX, and I was wondering, is that similar to UI, UX? Are you going to bound take an art test like that, or is that something that's not going to happen in UI, UX? I'm just kind of asking that because I didn't see it on your presentation, but yeah.
No, you're right. I left that part out, the art test. We do some people, yeah, it varies, but your mileage may vary depending on what
Mm-hmm.
studio and team you're going into. I used to do art tests as well.
Mm-hmm.
When we were in person, actually, which is a little strange because we actually had fewer candidates to go through than
Oh.
when we went remote. Um, but yeah, we would hand out an art test.
Mm-hmm.
And even as if you ever become a manager, try to do art, like write your art test ethically, meaning don't give an art test that's like, um, something very close to what you're making. Like, I'm not going to be like, hey, make a main menu for an NBA 2K game. Like, go. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it just feels like you're doing free work for them, right? So I would
Yeah.
usually tailor it to, I would be like, hey, make a wipe, or if it was a motion graphics thing, I'd be like, make a wipe between a monkey and a donkey, like a monkey
Mm-hmm.
versus a donkey slamming into each other, so it's obvious you're not doing work for them, and hopefully it's
Mm-hmm.
something cool they can put on their portfolio later.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it does happen. To answer your
Okay.
question, I try to do that as least as possible because it's already hard out there for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just getting to the interview is the hardest part, and making them do an art test and all that is probably my last resort. It usually happens when there's a tiebreaker situation between two
Gotcha.
people. So if you're doing an art test, that's a great sign. It means you're heavily,
Mm-hmm.
heavily being considered. Um, so yeah,
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
What's
you're welcome.
to piggyback on that, what's your thoughts of like if you do an art test and you're spending all this time for a studio, but then you're under NDA because you can't, so a lot of studios before you go for an interview, they will ask you to sign an NDA. What's your thought about creating an art test, but then they tell you that you're not allowed to actually put that into your portfolio because you signed an NDA? That that I've seen a lot. I have my own personal take on this, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, that NDA does suck, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Especially you spent time on this thing, doing this thing to, for free to, present yourself and, all things point to you should be able to do this thing, right? But, it really depends on your NDA. You could reach out to the hiring manager and be like, hey, like,
Mm-hmm.
especially if like it's like nothing adjacent to what they're doing anyways, like usually they'll be like, oh yeah, that's fine. You made a monkey and donkey thing. Um, but the ones the NDAs that are usually like, no, don't do this is because maybe they made you make something that was super close. Like maybe they handed you their fonts and their, some of their assets to kind of assemble with,
Mm-hmm.
to see what you did. Like I think I interviewed once where they handed me the fonts and even some of their character photos, and they just said put it together, right? So in that case, yeah, that makes sense. You probably shouldn't put that work on there.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I would say it depends. I'd say from what I've seen, there hasn't been a lot of like ethical art tests out there. It's all just, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. I would say that if you're spending all that time and resources to build an art test, my take on it is that, like you said, if you change the font, you change the colors, you change the characters or some sort, you replace it with other,
Right.
you don't lose all of that hard work that you've been putting into it, right? And I think as you are developing the art test, back of your mind, you should always be thinking about like, okay, I'm going to be replacing all these assets eventually because I want to
Mm-hmm.
put this into my portfolio. So keeping that thought back of your mind is it would be important part of the process, I would say. But
Okay.
that's what I personally have done in the past where I'm up to a point though in my career that if you ask me for an art test, if my portfolio is not strong enough for what you're looking for, chances are is that I'm not what you're looking for. So me personally, I've been burnt too many times with art tests. And so I just declined at that point. But if I would be really, really desperate, I would probably do an art test, but keeping in mind that, there would be like a lot of candidates. So I don't know. I'm torn. I'm not a fan of art tests as a hiring manager. I've never it's not
Mm-hmm.
something I personally have forced a studio to do. I feel like that's where your portfolio comes in and you're explaining everything in your portfolio. So what we've done at Ready at Dawn, though, instead of doing an art test, is that what we started doing is that we would ask the candidate to explain in detail their favorite portfolio piece. And I feel like if you can walk me through your portfolio piece and I want to understand your process and all this stuff, that for me was a better outtake than sending out an art test to somebody and then just, but it varies from one studio to another.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. Mhm.
I like that idea, Stefan, like, swapping the art assets for something that's you, and then, being able to publish it. I think that's totally viable. That's an awesome idea. I might do that myself.
There you
Um,
go.
so yeah, once you get to your first job and your first day, don't work in isolation. It's tempting to get started on a task and nose down to create the most perfect piece of art on the first pass to impress your team or your boss, but this is risky. You end up putting too much polish on your work and you become attached to the first pass. You risk missing the direction, and worse is your lead might actually feel bad about changing all the hard work you did on it, and it passes through, and we end up just taking that vision down a notch. Um, so show your work early and often. It creates room for honest feedback before the team becomes emotionally invested in your output. And this goes without saying, I think, but you'll likely be tasked with something adjacent to what you showed on your portfolio, that got you hired. So demonstrate that thing, but also find ways to that you can inject that peripheral skill that you learned. And most importantly, don't suffer in silence if some tool or your build breaks, um, or some process isn't clear. Ask for help, communicate. Nothing paints a target on your back more than breaking the build. Most dev teams have mitigations in place, but UI is usually the most sensitive data to submit because it's so closely hooked into programming and code. Test your build outputs, test in game when possible. If you manage to survive the first 90 days without breaking your build, then you've already done better as a developer than when I started off to be. I think I broke my build like the first month. But yeah, I've said communicate 3 times, and that's the big takeaway here.
What is breaking a build? Sorry.
What is breaking a build is your question?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, so when you're in software development, um, usually everyone has like a file versioning system, and what that does is it needs to communicate to the engine or the code like where to grab your art. And so, like, let's say you named your main menu and you had a flower on it, for instance, and then someone said, "Hey, don't put a flower on your main menu. Let's put a bird on there instead." And so then you go and rename that file from flower to bird. But the game engine remembers the word flower. And so because you've renamed that file, like the engine will just like explode. It'll be like, what? There's no more flower here. What do I do? So it usually breaks. And it's on purpose, like it's on purpose to catch that thing. So the game will do what's called an assert and be like, hey, we're missing this texture. This is likely not intentional. So you'll need to purposely instruct the engine that says, no, actually, I changed it from flower to bird. So, and that's the way you fix that instance of that build. And so breaking the build is basically getting those warnings or called asserts. And you'll usually see that with whatever studio you're working at. Well, it's just a big output log, like activity log of the thing, like your game building from your art. And that's what that means. Thank you for that question. A lot of times I speak about these things as if you're already in the studio with me, so I appreciate questions like that. Um, so yeah, so after your 90 days, congratulations. It's what you did worked. Keep doing it. The next still is getting comfortable with interfacing with other colleagues in your art departments, like design, engineering, audio, production. Venturing outside of your out of your realm can be more acceptable over time and necessary for growth. Once you've gained expertise in your domain, identify the piece of the product that you want to own and volunteer it for yourself. Basically, ownership is job security. So find ways to own a slice of the feature, and especially one that you know won't go away. And hopefully, you'll have the dream scenario where you work on something that you enjoy. So maybe now you've been in the industry for a while, and maybe you want to offer a little bit more. Maybe now you're ready to become a UI art director. Here's what I learned becoming a UI art director. I had to let go of the gas pedal a bit on pixel pushing and doing the art. And of course, there was a lot of moments where I got jaded by all the cool things my fellow UI artists were doing. However, the trade-off was, I was able to democratize the vision that I had with my team, and I was able to have fun orchestrating like that unified vision with meticulous mood boarding, collaboration, and brand consistency. I also got closer to like the halo level of like the top level of UX design. So I was able to do lo-fi and gray boxing wireframes with the design teams. In NBA 2K, as the game modes grew horizontally and vertically, efficiency became very important to me. Like new features that were made as like a one-off custom bespoke menu in today's game would end up being like iterated on in the next one and reskinned to next year's title. And because it's so custom and bespoke, it's very recognizable. And so you would have to then keep making a very bespoke thing from year to year. And being an annual title, that effort just compounds. And they became really difficult to upkeep. So it was like putting up a Christmas tree and then never putting it down and then having to redecorate again the next year. Um, so instead, we fix it by reconstructing them into more conventional menus with shared UI components. But if you recall, in NBA 2K, we really had just 2 months or less to discover a new look in R&D. So efficiency really mattered to me as an AD. Like all the efficiency gains we did meant two things. It afforded the team more chance to collaborate and on creativity and give room for more UI artists to blend into the UX work. Noticing drift is another skill I developed as an AD. Sure, there was an art side of it, like cohesion of art style and interactions. Like, does this icon family feel like one family? Like cohesion and iconography. Did the concept get lost in translation during the implementation? Um, but the hardest part was actually the people drift, like the personnel drift. Sometimes your artist will lose interest or something happens outside of life at the job, outside of work. And so I found it important to, I felt better when I repositioned to be more in service to my guys and not the other way around. Lastly, zooming out and taking a step back is what I found immensely useful as a UI art director. It can be applied to anything really, whether that's like stepping back to squint at your screens, evaluate the contrast of your UI, or surveying the ever-changing landscape of game development, such as like new TRC requirements, which is like platform requirements and button requirements and how big the PlayStation logo needs to be on things. New design directives that will eventually come, new marketing campaigns and new design trends. There's even like news, I think was important. Like I remember when the BLM riots were happening and it was like a Sunday after it happened. I got an email that said, Herman, we got to do something about this. This is very adjacent to our product and, we have to do something. And so I made, a BLM poster that would pop up in the beginning of the game the next day. And so we updated it and it became a thing. So you kind of gain these exposure and opportunity to like really high level things that could influence a lot of things. So why am I telling you guys how to even be a UI art director anyways? Earlier I mentioned there was two elephants in the room. The first one was layoff and studio closures. This one is about artificial intelligence. Now, I know AI is a very polarizing topic, and I almost deleted this section entirely, but it's too hard to ignore. It's changing so fast and very little guidance and regulation. I came from a place of almost hatred about generative AI, right about when Studio Ghibli art was being generated everywhere. I was fearful of it replacing everything we love and do. The effects on environment and data centers draining our local resources. The worst thing about it is training itself on all of our art without our permission. But I also know we can't throw it back into the box either. Like the potential for it to do good also exists, like in cancer research, climate modeling, or global access to knowledge and more. So it feels responsible to talk about it to some extent rather than not. So the reason I'm talking about my experience as a UI director is this: if AI does all the things it says it can do, I think it will make artists closer to being a UI art director and possibly more. And this kind of goes back to what Stephanie was asking. So, likewise, UI UX artists can kind of do the same. Like or it's basically democratized our craft where engineers, producers, designers can prompt a version of the UI, and UI UX artists can do the same with their domains. So now there's an overlap, and now everyone is questioning their value. It may change teams and job descriptions and prototyping and hiring, and even the number of people required to accomplish certain types of work. For users of AI, prototyping friction vastly decreases, discarding weak ideas very easily and being able to detach from those. They can now quickly test interactive wireframe interfaces before requesting engineering support. Remember when I talked about efficiency as a pillar to giving more time for creative mood boarding? Well, now we have that. And not only that, but the ability to create a mood board and distill it down to the best on brand, or what's now being called taste, could be the new valuable skill adjacent to being a skilled art director. So how could workplaces adopt AI without replacing people? I think if a workplace becomes fully adopted, like it's a little weird because not everyone is fully adopted, or they're halfway adopted. But if you do end up in an environment where they are fully adopted, the best thing to do is document that placeholder you generated so you can hand it off to the proper expert domain to review. Like, for instance, what tool made it? How many times did you prompt it? What did you do to change its output? Offer a chance for your co-working expert to give an opinion about it. Stephanie, I think you raised your hand. I just caught that.
Yes, and remember not to accidentally leave the placeholder in the final game.
Yes. Did you guys hear about Expedition 33?
Yes.
Oh, it's such a shame because it's such a great game, and that, I'm sure the placeholder was just an artist's like mistake, but man, the
Yeah.
backlash they got with it was just unfortunate. Thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, I'll offer a chance for, if you document it like we're talking about, hopefully you'll get more eyes on it, and the fault won't be blamed on you, So it's a good way to protect yourself. But most importantly, offering the chance for your coworker to give their expert opinion about what you generated. This forms kind of an agreement that they will hopefully do the same for you. So you both show value in each other's expertise. This can be also used as a document to document AI generated slop and protect you from shipping a game with it. So in this way, I think AI will not replace game developers. We're getting into the thick of it here, but from various research I did, I mapped out the current consensus for ethical use of AI art. So in the ethical zone is basically the ideation and administrative stuff, like hey, clean up my emails or something. But it could be also style guide exploration, visualizing mood boards, and upscaling your own drawings. And then the caution yellow zone is production and editing. So anything that touches like a client-facing thing or a contract, you can do it, but just be sure to disclose it and double check where the training data came from. And for the unethicals, this is indefensible, is taking from a living artist without consent and trying to resell it. If you're vibe coding, and vibe coding is basically leaning heavily on generative coding, it can be ethical through responsibility and accountability. Take extreme caution here because responsibility involves like knowing your knowledge limits, like pause if you don't know enough. For instance, like if you don't know the pitfalls of like creating authentication logins, and maybe you don't make an app that requires that. You risk losing customer data, payment errors, and create a web of technical debt. Like find an expert who can verify or replace a part of it with a credible service that already exists instead, and create strong testing systems, and hire that expert, and maybe people will begin to realize that about UI and UX as well. They'll need to eventually hire you as the expert. So how does this relate to UI UX? For artists, it can be a very legitimate way to build tools that would otherwise stay out of reach. But, for instance, if it touches file operations, it could become invasive somehow. You may need to pause and consider an expert for review if you're uncomfortable with that. So on the outcome, knowing what the tool is supposed to do and the blast radius of the danger it might cause, respect open source licenses that it might use, and never place private or proprietary information into these prompts. And of course, disclose and document the AI code to your team. AI can remove technical friction, but it can't remove accountability. So while people are trying to figure this all out, like how else can we protect ourselves? In the US, AI regulation is in gridlock, and models don't get smarter by themselves. They need data to train, your data. Don't let this AI data train on your final output data. Think twice about putting your photos and videos and art portfolios on cloud-enabled services or websites. Instead, try local software that never touches the cloud. Many creatives aren't aware that cloud services like Figma and Pinterest and Canva have their AI training on by default. It's not opt-in. You actually have to go in and opt out yourself. There's a local first software movement that is starting to gain momentum, and I've been part of this, and it inspired me to build my own project that I'm currently working on. I can share a little bit of that here. I'm currently making what's called FenSite to protect my own media. It's a locally installed infinite board that sits on top of your visual files. But I built it for technical and creative folks like us. In fact, the presentation you're watching is actually using it, which is why you've been seeing me zoom in and out a little bit of it. It's not just a privacy app. It can ingest images and image sequences, videos, just from pulling a parent folder, which can be a really good way if you're starting a job. Say you're, this is probably really small for you guys, but when you start a job, you have an art folder and with a ton of subfolders that are really deep. And sure, you can go through the stuff and try to dig through the folders. But here, what I've done is I just drag that parent folder in, and it kind of separates into just a holistic view of everything that's in there. And it handles I think the most I've seen is 50,000 that it can do. But yeah, it's directly actionable. So, you can play videos and stuff on it. So I got light leaks that I can reference into After Effects if I need to, or, if I need to look for an HDR image for lighting a scene or a cool photo, you can just drag and drop. So, it has full window shell capabilities. This is built for Windows only, unfortunately. But yeah, you can do more with it than say Miro could. And so that's kind of what I'm making right now. And I even have a tool bag of things. So I think the coolest thing it can do actually, or I could show you a little bit. I won't spend too much time on this, I promise. I can, let's see here. I can do it by color. Let's try that. So it's, I got 3 buckets of things, and it gets everything from red to chartreuse to cyan and violet. I can even maybe even take some of these and distill that down to maybe let's do a couple more buckets here. And let's give that a shot. Oops. Let's give that another shot. And so let's up that one more time. Let's see here. There it goes. So that can even be micro reduced down, which is super cool, especially if you're an art director and you're just looking for that super cool reference that your team did before, and maybe you just want to discover those things. So, and of course, if you want it back to normal, you just go back and everything's nicely organized again. So it's a really quick way to just kind of discover things. But the main takeaway from this is I created this to help people protect their art. Sorry, I think I saw a hand up,
I think it was
or
Tian
maybe
had
I
this
didn't.
Yeah,
question.
it was me, but I don't know if like you talked about AI and like how it can like feed on our photos and on our what we feed it. Is that,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it's why like triple A studio, like, okay, I'm gonna put in context. Let's say I'm working on Assassin's Creed Shadow and I need to make a couple of icons and I'm not really good in proportion, human proportion. So I'm asking an AI for reference, but I cannot, by the NDA, share photos of the game. But if I want reference, like to help to have an AI help me like build like a couple of icons and just, the position of like the characters and everything, how am I supposed to do this? Because I cannot feed like let's say Gemini or ChatGPT, hey, I'm working on Assassin's Creed Shadow, here what I'm doing. You cannot do that. How do you proceed by that? Is that by like the intern AI that they have?
So I think the question is like, if you're working on a special IP and you're using AI, how do you protect the IP? Is that your
Yeah,
question?
exactly. So,
Okay.
because sometimes when people they do icons or like in Assassin's Creed Shadow, we see like let's say they have the blade and we can see like the assassin with the blade in a certain
Hmm.
position. But as someone who
Right.
doesn't illustrate or is not really good in drawing, how can they have a reference for their creation without feeding the AI the game that is like in production that they cannot share?
Hmm.
That's a
Um,
trick question, right?
yeah. Um, that's a tough one. Usually in jobs, like I think when I left 2K, the AI was kind of in its infancy.
Hmm.
It was very new, but we would document stuff. So I think actually, yeah,
It's okay
there's
if you don't
quite a
answer right now.
no,
It's
that's
okay if
fine.
you don't.
I think it is worth like kind of touching on. I think it boils down to documenting. So usually, so when I say like, cloud software, what usually is happening is those softwares usually sign NDAs with those companies as well, and they know companies will end up suing them back, and they need to really protect themselves as well. So they have more of a protection against things leaking. Um, Although I just heard yesterday about something being leaked. Um, they try not to leak IP. Uh, I don't know what the future holds on that, but there's safer models out there. There's unsafer models out there. I would say like there is such thing as local LLMs, like local languages that you can use to even generate things that doesn't leave the cloud at all. That deserves a whole different talk. So if you're really nervous about your IP being leaked, you like look up local LLMs, and you can install those and use those, and that might be the
Mhm.
solution.
All right. Because I know
Yeah.
some triple A studios, they have like say Ubisoft, they have an intern like AI. They use an intern AI for their team and it doesn't go out. But let's say a designer is using ChatGPT to generate icons for Assassin's Creed Shadow. It couldn't work because you
Yeah.
need to keep it like secret.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I wish I could answer that question better. I think we're all still trying to figure that out. But yeah, thank you for that. Something to chew on for sure. Um, so yeah, I think the
Hey,
main takeaway from this is, oh, sorry, I see another hand being raised.
Um,
Zen,
yeah,
or
yes.
sorry
I
if I'm
actually
saying
had a
that wrong.
question, not a question. I had an answer to Moshian's question actually.
hey,
Um,
Zed,
Okay.
we can barely hear you. I don't know if you can turn
oh,
on the mic. Sorry.
I'm sorry, my mic is away from my face. Wait, can you hear me still or no? Better?
I can.
Not
Yeah.
better? Okay. Sorry, my mic's like it's like a stand mic. Anyway, um, I had a follow-up question, but I think you kind of already answered it. It was also to Olshian's question too.
Mhm.
I'm sorry about your name. I'm not used to this. But yes, companies have their internal AIs. It depends on the company. Some of them might actually use both the internal AI and another external AI like ChatGPT or whatever. If they want to use what you said like a reference and you can't have it escape their AI, local AIs like the company when they have their internal one do have access to the internet. So they could export themselves to the internet, be like, oh, you want to look for this? Okay, I got you. And then they pull it into their internal AI and it never leaves that AI either. So it's a sense of privacy, but also openness. It's like you looking on the web yourself through Google or something like that. But I also emphasize the usage of local if you're going to use any AI for example, because it stays on your computer and LM Studio is one of those things. But to what the ethics slide was before, I really do like that. Please leverage that.
Thank you. Yes, I use Llama myself for local AI. It does have cloud stuff too, but yeah, it's privacy is very important. I think an indie dev just announced that he thinks one of his characters' names got leaked from Google Docs training. I don't know what came out of that. I think news sources are trying to replicate what he did to have it get leaked, and they haven't been able to do it. So who knows what comes out of that? But definitely be careful. Everything's very new. So yeah, if you have something very important, like Zed is saying, try to use local LMs if you can. Um, so yeah, the main takeaway here is, protect your files and your data from cloud-based software and service apps. You'll never know what's done with your data, especially in today's wild ride of AI explosion. There's other tools I found that could additionally help and protect you. A group of PhDs at University of Chicago created this. It's called Glaze and Nightshade. They made both of them. Glaze is basically like you run your images through this tool, and it adds subtle distractions to an AI trainer, of which the human eye cannot see. So these two images here actually ran through it. And I can't see any difference at all. It's like akin to like putting a UV light on something. So, you wouldn't see it until you put that UV light on it. Nightshade, if you apply this tool, it poisons your art data somehow. It tricks scrapers by misidentifying objects in the image, like making an AI read a dog as a handbag or something. So it's really cool to look into. So
Hey, quick question,
um,
Herman. For those
oh, sure.
application, sorry, I was going to ask you, like, how do we install these? Are these like standalone applications or like?
They are, yeah, it's
Okay,
free if you go to their site. I'll probably link it to you guys later.
okay,
I forget what it's called. If you just look up Glaze or Nightshade, it
okay,
comes up immediately.
awesome,
But yeah, it's totally free and you download it. I think it's for all platforms. So yeah,
nice.
take a
And
look
then
at it.
follow-up question: your application you were showing earlier, how do
Mhm.
people can download that as well? Because from the chat channel, a lot of people are excited for this. So how we can? I don't know if you're going to share that information later on. So if you do, please let me know.
Yeah, I'll have links at the very end of this, and I'll be super happy. I'm trying to launch a beta for it right now, so all the features are free for a few months. If you want to come help me build it, that'd be super awesome. So I'll have all my contacts at the end.
Cool. Thank
Um,
you.
um, so yeah, to summarize this talk, we talked about jobs and what a recovery might look like and what the catalyst might be. If you keep adapting and growing, you could be the one still there when jobs take shape. But be open to adapting to AI with responsible and ethical choices. We learned that spending 1,000 days to learn anything could land you a paid job. Doesn't have to be UI, it could be anything. We covered Gestalt theories and how they can be applied across graphic design, UI, UX. And I laid out my speculative view that we might all overlap one day and you'll all become UI art directors and maybe a mix of other things. And lastly, we learned how to protect yourself as an artist while AI regulations are fluctuating. So if AI does everything and it claims it will do, protect your art and focus on the skills that transfer. So stay patient, spend some of those 1,000 days learning with UI Peeps, and that's it from me. Here's my links. Thank you, everyone, for your time this Sunday. This has been really fun. Really glad to have the opportunity to do this with you guys. Thank you, Stefan, for this opportunity to be able to have me speak my voice a little bit. Stefan, do we have time for follow-up questions or?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we got plenty of
Okay,
time. Yeah. So
cool.
if anyone has any question, well, first of all, thank you, Herman, for taking the time and putting all this slide. There's a lot of hard work that goes into these. It's not just like, hey, but yeah, thank you so much. This was really interesting. I think a
I
lot of
feel
my
what you do, Stefan. The presentations you do in the classes, I've seen blips of them, and they're top notch, man.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, no, I try to put a lot of heart and effort into UI Peeps, and I feel like it's always nice also for all the people that have been UI Peeps alumni. It's nice seeing your face again. So thank you for joining us for this presentation. And again, thank you, Herman, for everything. This was really informative. And I think I love the fact that you brought up some elephant in the room, like when it comes to AI, the whole what's happening in the industry as well. I think like a lot of people are feeling lost, and they don't know what to do. And I think and that's okay. Let's talk about it, right? It's like I think like conversations needs to happen. And I think like this was a great talk to summarize what's going on in today's world in 2026. So, and let's
Yeah,
hope for the best. Let's hope for like in the upcoming years, I think like triple A is there's going to be a reset when it comes to AAA games. I think like indies and smaller group studios, I think like big budget games are going to be phasing out a little bit more. I feel like, as AI comes into part of our pipeline, I think like leaner teams, more efficient, but I think it's really important also. I think we can all agree that the government's not doing a proper job putting guardrails, sorry, in with it comes to AI. I think that's horrible. I think we can all agree that AI. It's very it's there's not it's very black and white when it comes to AI. There's like a lot of gray zone that needs to have conversations about, right? And I think your talk was very informative on that. So thank you again. So,
yeah.
but if anyone has any questions, this is the time to ask any questions to Herman. So, all right, we got a couple. We got Carmen.
Hello, thanks for
Hi, Carmen.
hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for the talk. That was really, really useful. About the section where you talked about, how to become a UI art director and stay wary of drifting within the project so everything stays consistent throughout. How do you balance that with the art director? Because I'm guessing there's also an art director that takes care of the whole visuals of the game. So how do you balance the game art director vision with your own and staying consistent to that drifting?
Yes, that's a good question. Usually our teams have like art leadership meetings, and that's where those questions surface. So, when I was talking about how we mood board things and then we break off into creative teams and come back a couple weeks later to show our stuff. At that point, when we all come together and we created a mock based on our visual boards, usually when I would go to art leadership, like creative directors and studio art directors, and be like, hey, like this is what our team outputted this year. What do you think? Like, does this align, right? Because those studio leaderships usually have a even higher overview of the game, and they're usually in their own design meetings and upper level meetings that are discussing like this is the way we take the story this year. Like, one year it was like set in Shanghai and another year was set in New York. So the art that we would key on those things and those things would develop. So it's almost like I don't know, every week we would have weeklies with them, and discuss the changes of the game design. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of communication of being in sync and making sure what you're doing is visible to your studio ADs. But yeah, that's how I usually smooth out anything that was like surprising.
Okay, thank
Did
you.
that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, to follow up on that, what about design requests? Because a lot of the time you might have a vision for a certain screen, or the UX you want it to behave like, and then you get design saying, by the way, we want the screen to do something completely different, and that's that.
Oh, yeah, oh, right. So like, yeah, pushback is another thing. If if we're late in the development cycle and someone says like, I'm really thinking about redoing this design that we already approved months ago. That's when you do have to have a little bit more voice shine, and that's where a little bit more conflict comes up, and you're gonna have to kind of exercise like, okay, how do I conflict this, or how do I stand up to this? How do I push back? How do I do it tactfully? That just comes with experience. I practice on my kids. I negotiate with them all the time, so maybe I have a little bit more exposure there. I have two about to be teenage daughters, so I'm going to have a lot more of that. But yeah, I think it's you're yeah, and it goes with even your peers, right? Like one peer might really love a direction that they're going in, someone else might have a better direction, and so you kind of have to mediate. Um, that's probably going to be a lot of our jobs going forward. Maybe. I mean, with all the quick, rapid prototyping that's happening, and if we're all just trying to find like what fits on brand, what is that tasteful thing? That's kind of what we all have to decide, and whoever can pick the thing to spend time on, that will meet the general audience's expectation and improve on their expectation. That's basically what earns you the most money, right? Like the big creative directors are usually the ones making the right calls. So that's, I think, eventually where artists like to head.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions? I'm terrible at Zoom.
No, it's all
Sorry.
right. I got you, man.
Thanks.
I'm going to go through my Zoom. So Abigail is next, and then we'll have Jason after that.
Okay.
So I have maybe a less pleasant question. If you're not comfortable answering, it's all good. You told us that you faced a layoff last year with Crystal Dynamics. Sorry, I usually speak French too, so I have a thick accent, but
Oh, no worries.
hopefully you understand me. I
It
was
was actually
wondering.
a layoff at Visual Concepts, not Crystal Dynamics.
Oh, okay, sorry. And I was
Yeah.
wondering, how did you bounce back? Like, okay, I'm fired. What do I do next? Like,
Yeah. Oh man. I actually had a slide on that. Let me see if I can bring that up. Let's see here. Oh, I threw it away. Um, or did I? Oh, I did. Oh, I could find it. Give me a second here. Oh gosh, it's not going to let me because I'm screen sharing. Um,
Well, you can stop the screen sharing, and then you can reload it again if you want.
okay, let me try
Yeah,
that. Sorry.
yeah, maybe that will work. I think like one thing also, just to as you're doing this, Herman, I like to talk about this. Is like I feel like when you do lose your job and you lose, for me anyways, being a creative, when I went through some layoffs, I really felt like I lost a piece of identity, right? I felt like I didn't know who I was at one point because honestly, like I didn't have a lot of hobbies. I'm like, I always work. My hobbies was my passion was my work, right? And I felt like at one point I kind of lost who I was and finding like hobbies and finding like reconnecting with friends and which in the past I've kind of not, I wouldn't say ignored, but I didn't put a priority on that. I kind of like had to readjust my way of thinking and my way of living as well and finding who I was, I felt like for me, anyways, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I had like, for me, a job was just a job. But as I progressed into my career, I felt like, oh shit, my job is my career. It's like it's a part of identity of who I am. And when that was gone, I felt completely lost, you know. And these are like some trials and painful things that you have to go through. So, yeah.
Yeah, I did find the slide eventually. I had this slide up. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to talk about it or if I had time, but this is the slide I made. It talks about my feelings as when I got laid off. Basically, what you end up feeling, and hopefully you don't have to deal with this, but what you end up feeling is like waves of grief, is how I would describe it. And the longer you're at the job, the larger those waves come and bring you down to the depths of like depression almost. So, be careful of your mental health. Like, don't immediately jump back into, applying to the next job if you've just got laid off. Like, take some time to kind of process and heal from it and process your thoughts. Um, and like I said, the longer you deal with it, the more those waves will happen. But it gets better over time. Like for me, I think it was 18 years that I was there, so it was like you're like Stefan said, your whole identity, all these people that you worked with and you formed bonds with, like it's just in a snap, it's just gone. So all these things about managing your finances, and especially if you have a family, like how do you deal with that? I think the slide could have its own presentation on like, how you deal with finances and managing money through layoffs and all that. And um, but just know that it does get better. It always does. For me, like this is the following slide. Like, it created open space for me and gave me a long runway. I found time for myself, and I harnessed my leftover work energy to do other things like make a fence site. I ended up doing a lot more chaperoning for my kids' field trips. I'm just a hell of a lot more involved with my kids and their schoolwork, and I think it's even measurable. Like their math scores have gotten a little bit better. I've become more of a tiger dad now that I'm more around, but um, it's definitely the space I didn't know I needed. I launched that project. I became a better dad. I'm actually, as I'm creating this little business of mine, I'm finding that I'm doing a whole lot more UI UX work for myself. And when you do something for yourself, it's amazing. Like I'm actually working more, and Stefan can probably say this too. You're working more and longer than you ever did at your 9 to 5. Like it's now become I don't know, a 9 to 2 a.m. for me in some days. And I don't even get tired. It's like fun to do. Um, so yeah, hopefully that shares my thought process on that topic. Thank you, Abigail, for that question.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
All right, next we got Jason, and then we'll do ARC after that.
Hi, Herman. Thank you for your presentation.
Hi, Jason. You're welcome.
My question is, at your time at NBA 2K, um, the game is always mentioned as being notorious with the microtransactions.
Yes.
And as on the UI and the UX team, like how do you balance that, like trying to dictate what the business is calling for, like from 2K on the publishing side, and
Yeah.
when you have a community that's very robust that loves NBA so much, like how do you delve with that feedback as well, like not pushing it so heavy in their face, and and like, but at the same
Yeah.
time you have to design this. Is there a lot of pushback with upper management, like what they're dictating, like with microtransactions and whatnot? Like, I don't know if you can go into details or stuff
I
like
wish
that.
I contractually I can't, unfortunately. Just know that yeah, those discussions do happen. I think if there's one I could touch on, it's more kind of art related. I think God, can I say this? I think there's one like where the company is called Visual Concepts. So VC is just happens to be the acronym of our company. And then VC also stands for virtual currency.
Yeah.
And so someone had the idea of saying, hey, let's put our company logo on the coin. And I'm like, do we really do this, guys? So I kind of pushed back on that a little bit, and I won that one. So we didn't do it. I showed the Lego Drive, seasonal menu that I designed, and I actually happened to design two. I worked on both NBA 2K and Lego Drive on the same year, and both games I ended up designing seasonal menus. So yeah, it's we hear the public feedback is heard. We just as devs we lean on the upper management to make those high level decisions, and we depend on them to make the right decisions, and that's really all I can say about that part.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
Cool. Next, we got Arca.
Hi, thank you for the insightful presentation.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask about the interviewing process. More specifically, do you have any questions that you like receiving from the candidates?
Oh, yeah, really good one. I think I loved it when they when they ask personal questions about me or anyone else on the team. They say, like what are you into? Like, what do you like? And it really starts a conversation of like how each other got to where we are, and it ends up being like a mini guest talk. Other questions are like, what games do you play? That usually is very adjacent to what you're about to do. That's a really great one. And that's a really good connection, especially if the hiring manager does play a lot of games. I happen to play a lot of games, so it's very easy to connect to my candidates. Yeah.
There's also the
Gosh.
serial question that you can ask. I don't know if you've heard of it. I'm sorry.
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
No, it's the one you told us. Like, you can ask if you'd rather eat a bowl of
Oh, the
cereal.
serial question. I thought you meant like a series of questions. Yeah, the serial question is great. Yeah, I think the biggest question that I would ask if I was on being the interviewee, or the person being interviewed, is that the right word? Is like, what would a slam dunk look like in my first 90 days? We discussed that 90-day thing. Like, what does a slam dunk look like to you if I were to, first be at this job? And that usually gets like the hiring manager's expectation up and out front, and they'll start talking about like, okay, this is what I think would really work out great, and then as they talk through it, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I really need someone that not only does UI UX. A big problem I have usually is like, sometimes someone will say, hey, like, we're bored of doing 2D icons. Like, you want to do some rendering icons for us, but then all my 3D guys are busy making, other 3D things. So, I'll either have to get a vendor to do that, but hey, if I have an artist that can do that, and if you key on that, you're like, well, hey, I do 3D art as well. Like, I can jump in and help with something like that. That's usually a great question to ask. So, what is that slam dunk? I'm using sports reference, but yeah, what is that? How does a great first 90 days look like at your next job?
Okay, thank you.
All right, next we got Zen, and then we'll do Janelle.
Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say Janelle can go first because I was the last hand before that.
Okay, sure. First off, thank you, Herman, for the presentation. Seeing Fensite blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, that is amazing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that,
you guys are the first one saying it, by the way. This is like the first time I'm actually publicizing it. So like, I
Gosh.
had all sorts of anxiety before this, and I'm like, should I even show this thing? So thank you for mentioning
No, that's it.
saying that.
Like that's awesome. And then I mean, just seeing a tool like that for again, like us creatives, I think that definitely um
Yeah,
makes me feel better, at least in terms of like the direction that we're going in with tech.
cool.
But I do have a couple of questions. So in terms of, from your hiring perspective, and you touched on, generative AI and how to be ethical in that part. And I was curious about your thoughts when, if people are using AI for essentially just pulling data. So like synthesizing, like let's say we have our own user data and within like a local like LLM and we're using um our model to synthesize our data or even just pulling information for competitive analysis. What are your thoughts about candidates bringing that into their case studies and mentioning AI being used in that way? So not necessarily in the creative or art sense, but just for the data sense and making it easier for us to, essentially like find games that are similar to this project that I'm looking for a competitive
Yeah.
analysis.
Yeah, I think I'd say that's akin to going on Google and searching what is a great looking UI in games. And so if you were to prompt an AI the same question, it would probably give you a faster list and a more digestible list than like having to scroll through all of Google's ads first to go and like find that thing. Um, yeah, I'd say that's viable. And I guess then you can take a collection of them, and if like, I guess you're saying like, what if you made a mood board of them and then started to like select all of them and then synthesize. I can't say that. Synthesize all that information, that data into one text. I think that's also fine. Um, I think when it comes to changing it, that's where it gets into like, hey, let's be careful here. That's when you got to start documenting and say, hey, this thing is starting to now veer from now you're from research to now creation and generation. So, yeah, um, a lot of mood boarding, Pinterest, and I mean, I guess that's almost adjacent to like, AI training if you were to upload stuff to Pinterest in a way. So yeah, it's a little bit of a weird area that I need to think of a little bit more. I'm with you there on being cautionary, and it's already a great mindset that you're cautionary about that thing. But I'd say again, using local LLMs is always a great option. So if you're worried about it, I'd say like, like if you were to make like let's say you made a video about some other game that you love, like Tomb Raider or Assassin's Creed or I don't know, Undead, um, or Uncharted or whatever. You're free to like take screenshots and even like comment on them on YouTube and all sorts of things like that. Like I think there's a rule about that. It's called like free. God, I forget what the name is. But you're allowed to talk about things and criticize things. And so in that way, I think it's called free domain. You have the free domain to criticize and evaluate something and apply generic thoughts on it, which is why I'm able to share what I showed you in NBA 2K. I didn't talk about like how we derived it and that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of similar to synthesizing in a way. So, and I'm just kind of talking out loud about that
No, I
or thinking out
appreciate it.
loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then another question I had was, well, just to give some context, I'm coming from like a SaaS background and I've worked with a lot of
Okay.
startups, so I've never really worked on a game before. But from your perspective and from your career, like when did you know that you moved from like a junior or mid-level to a senior level designer in the game industry?
Oh gosh.
Or like how could you
I
see that? Sorry, like even just hiring somebody, like what separates a candidate from being
oh
a lower levels? I guess maybe that's an easier way to think of it.
yeah. Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say someone who's more senior probably can have the ability to articulate and do a write-up on their work or even someone else's work. So, I think junior artists usually come in the form of like the three categories I laid out. Like they're usually the asset creators and they'll be building icons or you know 3D assets in our hiring cases. When it comes to UI, I think it's you can kind of just visually tell from the portfolios for the most part. So usually, if something does look good, the, discerning whether they're senior or not does come down to articulating their work, and if they can talk about how they made it, how they came and iterated and showed their process, that's usually how I discover them as more of a senior. Yeah. Hopefully that kind of answers it.
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we got Zen, and then we'll do Stephanie.
Yep.
Hey, Zed.
Hello again. So my question is related to research. So on UX, depending on the company, obviously, there's usually research to back up like like design decisions, even just like when it comes to not just design decisions, like even when it comes to the overall direction of the project. So especially for my company, when AI became a thing more often, especially at the beginning of this year, and it shifted a lot of our teams, they started to use research less and started to experiment and push things out through experimentation more as a test. So I was wondering, especially in the game industry, is there always a dedicated research to understand it? If there's no research at all, how do you explore that? Does like if maybe if there's a crunch, like do you use less research or how does that move out? I guess I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I wish I had more chance to interact with the UR folks. At 2K, there wasn't like a UXR position, at least not while I was there. I think it might be because, we're an annual game where we didn't have that affordance. Um, but I think at least when I was there, that came more in the form of like we had community managers to kind of get all the feedback off of Reddit, whatever, influencers, they're playing the game and, are the core, the 4% of people that are propping up the industry, like getting those people's feedback, is and sourcing them is probably our version of the UR. Um, and so, a lot of game designers are keyed into that, and they'll be the ones synthesizing that, and they'll be the ones saying, "Hey, like this is what I think the UX could be." So there was already a lot of UX overlap. Like the game designers were kind of doing their UX first. They would hand them to me and producers, and we would evaluate that and be like, this UX actually doesn't fit with the overall UX that we have going on in this other part of the game mode. And, different UX designers are owning their slice, and other game mode, there's another UI or another game designers owning their slice, and they'll come up with like a round wheel, and another one will come up with a vertical carousel for their thing, or come up with a different tutorial mechanic. And so, a lot of mine was making those my job was making those cohesive across the UX. But yeah, the UI, the research side of it, I didn't get too much exposure as maybe like a SaaS company would probably have. Are you coming from SaaS or?
Mostly coming from not SaaS. Most at this point, I'm coming from everywhere. I have like too many different backgrounds. Mostly coming from finance, but yeah,
Okay,
like a finance
gotcha.
UX design role.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm guessing in finance you have a lot of your feedback is the customer data and maybe reviews of your app, and I'm actually curious to hear what the SaaS people like how they deal with it. I'm not that cognizant in modern tech these days, the tech scene.
It's a gamble.
uh
Cool.
I
And
think,
then we have Stephanie for the last question.
Yeah,
hey,
thank you.
Stephanie.
Hi. So I I have really roundabout questions. So I'm just going to start with a succinct question first and then give you some context. Um, my question is, have you browsed a lot of portfolios and resumes from people who did UI implementation as opposed to UI art or UI design or UX design? And if so, do you have any tips for how to showcase UI implementation without it getting confused for UI art? Because if somebody just looks at a piece of UI and they go, "Ooh, what nice flashy UI," that's not really showcasing. No, this is the person who actually like did the work in the engine to make it functional, right? So I'm
Right.
struggling to figure out how to showcase that for one thing, especially because like a lot of people here, I come from such a variety of backgrounds. I my portfolio right now is a bunch of like UX case studies from earlier in my career. Before I started focusing on UI, and it's mostly not video game stuff. It mostly comes from SaaS or other, non-video game applications. And then ever since I started working on video games, I've been on really tiny, indie studios where I was doing such a variety of the work. Again, jack of all trades, master of none. So it's hard to figure out what to showcase, what to focus on. And most of those projects, like one project, got they couldn't get any more financing, so it got shuttered before, it ever got like published. So like a lot of the work was in its infancy. It was in its like first iterations and not really, impressive and final looking. And then the most recent contract I worked on, a lot of that work is still under NDA and I can't show it yet. And even when I do show it, I was mostly implementing it while someone else was doing the UI art. So I guess my final question is, how does how can I showcase UI implementation work and make it like, do I just have to record videos of like me in the engine saying like, here's how I made it work?
Yeah, that is a hard one. First of all, because you can't even record engines, especially if it's proprietary, unless it's like a
Right.
public facing one like Unreal or Unity, or Godot. I mean, oh man, it's unfortunate that Unreal's getting rid of their blueprints for a ton of people.
Yeah,
That
because
that
that's what I work in. I work in Unreal Blueprints. Like
okay.
that's the only tool I've used.
Yeah,
I've been told that we can probably still use them for a few years, before Verse gets fully implemented or whatever. But
yeah.
yeah, that's how I implement UI is Unreal Blueprints. So I can show Unreal Engine, I think, but what's a good way to show that in a portfolio, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a lot of like node-based creative software out there. If you know any other thing that can showcase like, your logical connections from one thing to give you an output to the next, that's great. Like, I think there's stuff like Comfy UI for, if you're diving into, AI-based, node-based creative stuff. So like it's more generative though. Um,
Hmm.
showing something like that could be good for, the AI appeal, but for implementation appeal, yeah, the you need no graphs from your past blueprints are still
Okay.
viable. Like maybe before those go away, you can take screenshots of them. I don't think you won't, hopefully you won't feel old for showing them like, 10 years down the line, but I think it's still great to show that kind of stuff.
Yeah, part of
Uh,
the reason I'm taking Stefan's course is so that I have a more art focused
right.
portfolio piece because I know a lot of times when people think video game UI, they want to see that flashy, juicy,
Yeah.
cool looking UI. And it's like, okay, I can kind of do that, but I'm also an implementer. So
Mhm.
that's like the
Yeah.
not glamorous part of the job, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it's I mean, man, there's some creative things you could do even in that, like, well, like I said about the peripheral skills, if it's
Yeah.
just UI UX, learn some 3D maybe. Learn that,
Yeah.
and those 3D apps have no graphs themselves for materials and scripting, and even After Effects. And
Right.
After Effects, if you're doing motion graphics, you can share how you made a wiggle animation for something, or using expressions. There's a lot of like, or you can make your own app. That's maybe the next thing, like showcasing that, hey, you made this little tool. Like, you don't have to sell it or anything. Just be like,
Right.
hey, I made this thing, and it's a cool little plugin I made in Maya, or a cool like little web snipper that I use to create a second brain for myself. That's, I don't know if you guys have heard of Second Brain. Like, it's like, it's a big thing now where you like download as much research as possible and put in a local thing like Obsidian, and it's like a big research thing that just holds all of your thoughts. But you can show like how technical you are in documenting things is also a great trait, I would say.
So have you personally like looked at anyone's portfolio that was an implementer? Like, and do you
Oh,
recall like what like was a good like what stood out in their portfolio?
yeah, I think it usually came down to case study stuff. So that,
Okay.
not just like how the UX stuff, but also like how they scripted something, or how they created
Okay. So I could
their
still form it like
plugin.
a case study. Okay.
Yeah. I think case
Okay.
study is a good way to go. Screenshots if you can of whatever tool
Okay.
you used. Um, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
hmm
Sorry, that was very long-winded, all over the place
No,
question.
that's fine.
Cool. Anyone else has any question for Herman? You guys are all good? All right, awesome. Well, thank you again, Herman, for taking the time to do the slide deck. Really, really appreciate it. I think, why don't you send me the URLs of your app and all that information, and I'll make sure to share it with all the people on this call, and also when I post the video on YouTube, I'll make sure that that is in the notes as well, so people can download it. So, but yeah.
Will do. Yeah, I see all the emojis. I really appreciate you guys showing up. I thought it was just going to be like me and Stefan in this call. So this means a lot to me. Really appreciate being able to share my voice. And yeah, happy to connect. Add me on LinkedIn once you get the links from Stefan, or Discord, I think is a link I have as well. But yeah, super happy to be here. Really excited. This is day one of your learning. Remember, I said there was 1,000 days. Day two is tomorrow. So let's go, guys. Let's keep learning, and let's show our strength as UI people and UI enthusiasts. So thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, Herman, thank you so much again. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a good one,
Cool.
everyone. All right. See ya.
Awesome. See you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
Bye.
you.
you. Thank you, Herman. Thank you, Stefan.
Thanks.
No worries.